Hi, everybody. This is Ryan, co-founder of MedVenture. We have an exciting guest today. We're going to be meeting with Jared and Whitney of Therapy Mentorship, and they're going to be talking to us about how to be financially responsible and achieve semi-retirement as a traveler. So I'm just waiting them to ask to join. Hey, guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, thank you so much for jumping on with me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We have a lot of stuff to go over, and I guess we should just jump right into it. A lot of people have a lot of questions for you guys. So,
Yeah.
do you just want to start introducing yourselves and your what you guys do?
Yeah, so my name's Whitney,
And I'm Jared.
and we're both traveling physical therapists. We've been travel PTs for about 6 years, and we run the website called Travel Therapy Mentor, and that kind of started, as like a blog of us, writing about our adventures back when we were traveling, and then it evolved into us educating and mentoring other travel healthcare providers, primarily PTs, OTs, and SLPs, but a lot of our information applies across the disciplines. So we worked full time as travel PTs for 3 years, like back to back to back traditional contracts. Well, there's really no traditional when it comes to travel, but back to back work. And then after a few years of doing that, we really were able to transition our lifestyle to only part time work, or what we call semi retirement. And a lot of that was being smart with our money and our investing early in our careers, and just putting a lot of money aside, which we'll tell you guys more about. But yeah, now we basically only work like 3 to 6 months a year.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's everyone's dream, right?
Yeah.
And you could definitely achieve that as a traveler. So you guys have created a program for travelers, correct?
Yeah.
Travel Therapy Mentor Program. You want to talk a little bit about that before we start?
So we recently created a course. So over the last probably 5 years, or I don't know, several thousand travelers getting started, a lot of new grads and things like that. And created this course basically to mainly to get people interested in travel, like people that travel, teaching them how to travel, what we've learned and what we've uh, basically gathered from working with some travelers over the years, but also like tips to get ahead. So it's probably about 75% travel therapy related or travel healthcare related, and 25% financial independence and personal finance related.
Yeah, our online course, we titled it Becoming a Financially Successful Travel Therapist, because, we wanted to go beyond just the therapy 101. Like, of course, we teach you how to get started and all the logistics, but we went beyond that to teach you tips and tricks that we've learned through our years to set yourself up for financial success. And the cool thing about that is that definition different things to different people. Maybe people have certain goals to pay down debts, or they just want to get ahead to where they can put a good down payment on a house, or they just want to get to a comfortable lifestyle where maybe they can transition to PRN work or work like that. So whatever that financial success looks like for you, we teach you some tips and tricks on how to get there using travel therapy.
Yeah.
It's amazing. That's amazing. I personally took the course, and I found it very helpful for me as a nurse. So not just therapists. I feel like you guys are geared towards therapy, but I found it very helpful as a nurse taking the course as well. So I just
Yeah.
want to throw that out there that it's very helpful for all traveling healthcare professionals, not just therapists, but it is geared towards therapy, correct?
Yeah, specifically the finance part. I mean, that kind of applies to anybody, but yeah, kind of geared towards therapy, but a lot of the concepts will apply to everyone.
Absolutely.
So you just want to jump into it? I guess we'll talk about your top 10 financial advice, or I don't know. How do you guys want to do it?
Well, I think like a good direction to go with, this conversation is just looking at travel healthcare as what is your goal with travel healthcare? Because I feel like a lot of people come into this career path with different goals, and we maybe came into it with some financial goals, but then it just changed and evolved. And I think that's the really interesting thing about travel healthcare is like you may think you're on one journey and then it turns into this whole other thing, and it's just been an amazing lifestyle choice for us, really. So we went into it thinking like, we'll do it for a couple of years, and we definitely wanted to pay off our student loans and that sort of thing. But we found out that if you are, really smart with your money in the beginning, if you go into this and you know that finance is one of your goals, of course you can have many, you can have a goal to want to see the world, meet new friends, try out different settings. You can achieve all of those alongside meeting your financial goals, but you do have to be savvy with your finances to achieve that. Because I think there's a lot of travelers that, they just break even with travel therapy, and that's okay if that's your goal. It depends on like what your priority is.
Yep.
So I think that's part of like the big picture of like knowing your why for travel therapy or travel healthcare, travel nursing. What is your why for going into this, and what do you want to get out of it? Because a lot of times when people hear our story or they hear our tips and our tricks, they think like, oh, that's too frugal for me. I don't want to live my life that way. And we say, you don't have, you can use some of these same principles we've used to achieve your goals, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a choose your own adventure. Like, you can kind of take what works for you and leave what doesn't. And that's kind of the cool part about anything personal finance. There's a lot of different things that you can do that doesn't apply to everyone. You can just use what does work for you and, leave the rest of it.
Yeah, so just kind of, building off of our, you can kind of learn from that. We went into it with the goal initially that we were going to pay off our student loan debt, which I think a lot of people come out of school, and even if you're not like a brand new grad when you start traveling, you will be carrying your student loan debt. So we definitely know a lot of people that are able to throw a lot of money at loans. We actually decided after the first year to take a different route with our loans, and I'll let Jared kind of explain that financial choice.
Yeah. So student loans are definitely very, especially for therapists. Therapists come out of school with a ton of debt now. Like, we know some that have over $250,000 in debt. Is insane. And everyone, like, how do you handle that? It depends on your debt load. It depends on how much you make. It depends on your goals in life. But we decided to go income-based repayment routes, pay the minimum and invest instead. And we've come out way ahead that way versus just paying down the debt quickly. And that's not for everyone. We definitely say that. Like, there's some people that are not comfortable with that kind of risk. But yeah, if you have a high tolerance and you have a relatively low student loan interest rate and you're able to invest, you can really come out ahead and do anything.
I think a lot of people right now with the student loan payment being deferred because of COVID, a lot of people have been able to, without even necessarily being on that income, their payments have been put on hold. So we hope that a lot of travelers have used that opportunity to instead funnel that extra money towards investments and saving. Because I think the mistake a lot of travelers make is they're like, wow, I make so much more as a traveler. That means I can spend so much more. But if you inflate your lifestyle, then you're really, meeting your financial goals, putting all that money aside.
Yep.
Yeah, you guys are definitely talking to me, because when I started traveling, I just did it for the experience, and
Yep.
I wasn't even focused on the financial aspects of it, which I really wish I was before. But once COVID hit, then it all changed. It was all financial after that. And I think that's what most nurses are realizing. This was a good time to start investing and to start doing all that, and really looking at your future as far as investing. Now, are you guys talking about investing in stocks, Bitcoin, or your retirement, or what do you refer?
So there's a lot of different investing. I think for most people, in the way we started out, people think that investing has to be complicated, but it does not have to be complicated at all. It can be extremely simple. So I think for most people just starting out, a lot of this, it can seem overwhelming, like personal finance things and trying to reduce your expenses and increase your income and save the rest and invest and all that. So I think for most people, just a very simple strategy of taking the money every month and putting it directly into like index funds makes a lot of sense. And, those basically just passively track the S&P 500 or, whatever index you choose. And you don't have to worry about time or, doing anything crazy. And I think for most people that make a lot of money through work, it makes way more sense to focus your effort on earning as much as possible and then just leaving the investing portion, a lot more passive focus so that you don't have to spend time on it. But yeah, there are things you can do. Like, I've gotten really into cryptocurrency in the last year, and great. But I think that's kind of something that a lot of people probably should get right into, especially if you don't have a good understanding there. But yeah, I mean, investing can be as simple or as complex as you want to make it. And I think for most people, keeping it simple is probably the best.
You even though have to like take a step back from that point, because what we've learned over mentoring over the years and having these conversations with a lot of people is that there are people that just need to really start with the basics. Like, they just need to start figuring out how they can how they can budget so that they have money to put aside. Because if you don't have the money that you're putting aside each month, it doesn't matter where you put it, because if you are, maintaining credit card and these other like high interest debts and you're throwing your money at debts each month and you have a lot of high bills that you're carrying around, maybe looked at your budget from a perspective of like, where can I decrease my monthly bill, things like that. So you have to kind of look at it, where am I going to find the extra money to save? And there's just two parts to that equation, before you even get to where am I going to put the money once it is saved. So the two parts to the equation of how am I going to have money to put aside, how can I earn higher income and how can I spend less? So travel healthcare obviously gives us the opportunity to earn higher income. I mean, gosh, especially nurses with like the COVID expenses and like respiratory therapists and all that, and therapists to an extent. But I think once you already are like, okay, I can earn more as a travel therapist, but now I also have to try to keep my expenses low. So I'll have that extra chunk to put aside. So we always talk about a key point in travel healthcare is that balance between where you take your contract and the paycheck you're going to make each week and the rent and the cost of living in the year.
Yeah. A lot of travelers don't think about that at all, but we have worked in a lot of rural areas that we don't make the most. We're working on the coast where pay is already not as high. We're working in rural areas, but the cost of living is extremely low. Like we've stayed in some campgrounds and things for $200 a month, like insanely low rent. So if you think about that, I think a lot of travelers focus too much on how much they make and not on how much they actually keep each month.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you guys tried the RV lifestyle for a while, correct? Do you want to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that for those that are considering? Would you recommend it?
So we get this question a ton. We got into the RV life thinking it was going to give us a lot of money, and we wouldn't have done it otherwise. Like, there were two reasons. One, we thought logistically it would make our lives easier because you can just pack up and go. All your stuff is right there. In some ways, it did make our lives logistically easier, but there are some negatives. In some ways, it makes your life logistically harder because you have to learn about RVing. You have to learn about maintenance and repairs. You have to plan around where there is a so there's some logistical pros and there's some logistical cons. Now, we definitely thought we were going to save a lot more. I think in the long run, Jared ran some math, and I think in our situation, after having bought it, used it for 3 years, and then sold it, we probably broke about even compared to what with rent. But there's just factors, like it depends on if you already own one or if you're buying one, and if are you buying one new? Because that can be a big investment. Like if you spend so much money on a new RV and or truck to pull it with, like you're going to be in the hole. You could be in the hole $100,000. $7,000. And so now did you spend that money up front or do you have a payment each month? Yeah. And plus, on top of that, I think people don't take into account you have to pay for the campground rent at some places. And like on the East Coast, we've paid anywhere between $200 and $900 a month, which is fairly cheap compared to rent. But on the West Coast, we've heard of people in California paying $1,500 or $1,800 a month on if you have a payment for your RV or your truck or that sort of thing.
So the main thing to think about with an RV is that your monthly costs are probably going to be lower, but you're going to have high costs. And so you need to thinking about going that route is you need long enough time span to offset those initial upfront costs with the monthly savings. And so when people ask about that, I pretty much would not recommend someone get an RV unless they're going to travel for probably at least 2.5 or 3 years. I think that's kind of the break even for a lot of people. If you're going to travel longer than that, then that's when it makes more sense.
But I think the also a big picture here, you need to have more than to do it. Because if you also want to live that lifestyle and you're intrigued by that lifestyle and you feel as though it's going to make your life easier, especially for like people with certain dog breeds where it might be harder to find housing, people that have a spouse or family, children, for some of those type of travelers, it might just be a logistical better choice for you, or you might just be the camper lifestyle type person. So make it a choice as a whole. I wouldn't look at it like, yes, you're absolutely going to save money compared to rent, because you're not. You might break even or come out a little bit ahead, but you need to also know what you're signing up for logistically.
Yeah, it's definitely not a panacea in terms of like we thought.
It depends on where you want to go to, because like you said, the Bay Area, I had a friend that was paying $1,800 for a spot in an RV, and I'm like, you're really paying as much as I am. Like, you're not saving much money. So, yeah, you have to think about where you're going, how long you're going to travel, and those are all very good recommendations. We have a quick question from somebody. For someone who's thinking of paying off their loans as soon as possible rather than paying the minimum, what strategies would you recommend? Is semi-retirement still possible as a traveler?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to think about is if you want to refinance the loans. And there's some pros and cons there. So most people with student debt is federal debt, and you have certain protections that you don't have if you refinance. But so that's kind of the con. So you lose things like forbearance and income-based repayment options and potential forgiveness. But at the same time, when you refinance, you can almost always get a lower rate. So you have to weigh the pros and cons there. Is refinancing worth it for a lower rate? And, quotes and see how much that's going to play a big factor. Like if you're going from 7% to 3%, then yeah, like that might make sense. But if you're going down 1% interest and you're losing these protections, maybe it doesn't make sense. So for a lot of people, refinancing makes sense. You can reduce your rate enough to pay off the loans more quickly. So that's probably the first thing to think about. Besides that, obviously just reducing your expenses as much as possible. You can always try to take higher paying contracts and have more money left over to put towards. Whether to refinance or not is probably the place to start.
So from that point, you're going to have to come up with a financial plan, like plan it out in terms of a budget to figure out how quickly you could reasonably achieve paying off the loans. Okay, scenarios like if I pay this much per month, how quickly, if I throw this much each month at it, like if you guesstimate, I might have this much extra left over after I pay my expenses, how quickly could I feasibly pay that down? Now, back when we started traveling, Jared figured all this out for us, like just by being like a math person and using Excel. Now, luckily in 2021, like there's all kinds of online tools that you guys can use to do. One website we like, we have a friend that runs Fitbucks, Fitbux, and he specializes in like financial planning for healthcare providers. And he has a lot of free tools on his website, and that's just one out there. But he has tools on his website where you can plug in numbers and run scenarios of like, if I pay this much each month, how quickly can I pay it off? So that's like the big thing, is just trying to plan out how quickly could you pay it down, how cheaply are you willing to live? Like if you're the type of person who just got out of school and you're willing to just work really hard, work overtime if it's available to you, get a PR job, make extra money, still live a little bit like a student, like be willing to live with roommates and like keep your expenses low for those first 3 to 5 years, just to cut the loans out as quickly as possible. So that's, I think, the biggest thing, is like coming up with a financial plan. Some people feel comfortable using these online tools to strategize and figure it out themselves. Some people would prefer to pay a financial planner, and that's fine, to help you come up with a plan. But think about it, right? Like as quickly as you've, come to this realization, it's what you want to do, make a plan. But then we also often quite get the question, like, yes, if you want to then achieve financial independence, at what point do I shift my focus from paying down these debts to investing, or can I do them at the same time? Because that's a question that we get a lot, because achieving financial independence means you also have to have some money saved up and invested. So we would advise you to at least start investing some early. Like don't just have a one-track mind and I'm only going to focus on my debts. Like at least be putting a small amount aside so that it can grow with compound interest over those 3 to 5 years that you're paying down your debt too.
Yeah, and ideally in some kind of tax deferred account, so like an IRA or a 401k or a health savings account, something like that, where you're getting some sort of tax benefit along with that.
Yeah, so you can definitely make it happen if that is your financial goal. Now, for some people, like financial independence, retire early, a lot of people out there are just like, I just want to make sure to retire before 65, whether that's I can retire at 58 or I can retire at 50. We're kind of crazy having like semi-retired or late 20s, early 30s, but it may not be that extreme for you. You can knock out that debt in those first 3 to 5 years, and now you're really, maybe you put a small amount in your 401k, maybe just up to the employer max those first 3 to 5 years, but then at year 5, you've already been used to saving, right? You've been putting this big chunk of money aside towards your student loans. Well, now be like, okay, I can shift my focus and maybe inflate my lifestyle just slightly from student level, but I'm still going to throw a big chunk of money every month at my investments. And then, maybe you retire early or semi-retire early at 40, 45, 50.
Yep.
That's awesome. You guys kind of touched on this already, but we do have a question. What kind of retirement accounts do you recommend for traveling healthcare professionals? I know we can do 401ks with certain companies, but I know a lot of travelers, you have to start after 3 months, I believe, with the company, then the 401k kicks in. But a lot of travelers switch companies throughout their travel journey. So what do you guys recommend doing in that case?
Yeah, I think it depends mainly on how much you plan to save. So if you're saving anywhere less than maybe 10,000 a year, you can just get by skipping the 401k unless there's a match. Like you always want to get the match. But an IRA, you can contribute up to $6,000 a year, and a health savings account you can contribute. I think it's $3,200 right now. So that's about $9,000 right there. So if you're saving anything less than that, I would probably just skip the 401k just because it's an additional hassle, and just go with those. But if you want to save a ton, we saved a lot when we were initially traveling, then you can take advantage of all three of those. But of the three, if you have a health insurance plan that's eligible for a health savings account, that is a really, really awesome account. Because not only is it tax deductible when you put money in, it's a tax deductible when you take money out, either for health expenses, or if you have no health expenses, if you're extremely lucky and you make it to retirement age and you don't have to use any of that money, then it's tax deductible when you take it out then. So if you only chose one account, health savings account is a great account to utilize. Besides that, probably a traditional IRA, depending on how much you're making as a traveler, can make a lot of sense. And then if you want to save even more than that, then take advantage of the 401k.
Yeah, I want to make a couple comments there because I think that's like a life hack that a lot of people don't know about an HSA. They think of an HSA only as money that you're going to shuttle into this account. They usually give you a debit card, and you can use it as you go for things like prescriptions or buying stuff at the drugstore or co-pays. But if you don't need to use it right then for that, you can basically use it like an additional retirement account. It'll just sit there and grow tax-free. So you can either wait and take it out later if you have to turn in, and then even if like that's not actually what you want to use it for at that time, if you just have the receipts, you can turn it in and say, oh, I'm cashing it in for these medical expenses to get some extra money out earlier than retirement. Or you can wait until 65 and then get it out in as a retirement account. Second point here, Jared mentioned a traditional IRA. This is controversial because a lot of people say Roth IRA or traditional IRA. So he's written a bunch of articles about why you might choose one or the other. And from my understanding, it has to do with whether you think your income is going to be higher before retirement or after retirement. And it's going to be what your income is when you go to withdraw it. Right? So with the Roth, you get taxed on it when you take it out.
With the Roth,
or is it the opposite?
You get taxed when you put the money in, and then everything grows tax-free, and then everything's tax-free when you take it out. The traditional is the opposite. You get the tax break now, but then you pay tax when you take it out. So the main consideration is your tax rate going to be higher now when you're contributing, or is it going to be higher after retirement? And for a lot of people, you might think that you're going to be spending much more later. But the fact is, like, if you're a traveler and you're making a lot of money right now, these might be the highest earning years of your life. So it might make more sense to take the tax break now. So it really depends, and you should probably think about it a little bit, run the calculations. But yeah, I think traditional IRA makes more sense for a lot of people.
Yeah, and so Jared writes about, like, we have our Travel Therapy Venture website, but we also have a personal blog that's called Fifth Wheel PT, which was based off our, like, Fifth Wheel Camper. And that's where Jared will write a lot of articles about, like, his decision, our decision about, like, student loans and IRA, those kinds of things. So if you guys are intrigued by that and want to delve a little deeper. But yeah, HSAs, IRAs, and then the 401k. If you were a regular permanent employee, I think 401k would be your natural first choice.
Yeah.
But it can be a little more complicated because, like you said, sometimes you switch companies. So it's only if you're going to contribute past that 9,000 that you might want to mess around with the 401k and deal with the hassles.
It's amazing. Now, you guys all self-taught this, or do you have a business degree background? I gotta know. Like, how did you come up with all this?
I'm a very obsessive person, I would say. And sometime around graduation from PT school, so about 6 years ago, I got really into personal finance and financial independence. And this is not an exaggeration, I would bet you I've spent 10,000 or more hours learning and researching and listening to things. And so I spent a lot of time on it, but yeah, also all self-taught.
Yeah, but it's definitely important to note, like, we're not financial advisors. Like, we don't finance or business. Like, Jared has just all this and taught me, so I'm still kind of at that intermediate level myself of understanding all the ins and outs. But luckily, Jared's my unofficial personal financial advisor.
That's awesome. You sound like you know exactly what you're talking about. This is all really good information. Sorry if my connection's glitchy. You know, Mexico. You guys were just here, right?
Yeah,
I'm so happy we missed you. We were in Mexico for you.
I know, I'm bummed we missed each other too. Well, thank you guys. I want to say we learned a lot. I don't have any more questions. Is there anything else you want to just shoot out there to help our travelers?
I think one thing to throw out there when you're asking about investing is a lot of people, they want to just start investing. They think they're going to make a lot of money investing. For the most part, a lot of your returns, especially early on, it has more to do with saving than actually investing. So really focus on reducing your expenses, earning as much as possible so that you have as much as possible to put to the side. And then it's always okay to figure out what to do with that later. Especially early in your career, you're not going to make huge investment gains starting out. You know, it's later in life when you have a big nest egg that's really growing. So think about that. Another thing to think about is before you ever consider investing, always take a guaranteed return, which is paying down debt. So if you have high interest rate debt, so anything especially over like 6%, pay that down as quickly as possible. There's no reason to be putting money into an investment account when you have credit card debt that's at 26%. Like, you're not going to outperform that. So get rid of that first. So there's some people that kind of put the cart before the horse in terms of investing in things. But if you can pay down debt and get a guaranteed return, especially if it's high interest rate debt, that's always going to be probably your best investment.
Yeah, you have to cross off those what we consider the basics of finance. Like, don't carry a balance on your credit card. Get rid of credit card debt. You know, maybe you accrued it, maybe you went through tough times, but I think that needs to be one of your first steps when you're trying to achieve financial independence, is get rid of that high interest debt, car payments, credit card payments, things like that. And then if you decide what to do with your low interest debt, whether you do an income driven repayment plan like we have, or you pay that off too, but don't forget about investing early, even if it's just a small amount. Like, the smallest little amount is going to pay off if you can just put a amount, like maybe up to the employer match with your 401k, or just the HSA or the IRA, one of the two. Just get a little bit growing for you, because if you start in your 20s or your 30s, it's going to have a lot more time to grow than if you wait to worry about it in your 40s or your 50s. But with that said, just our biggest message here, essence of what we want to give to you guys, is healthcare gives you so many freedoms. Like, to not only see the kind of therapy to your advantage, it's really changed our lives. Like, if you had asked us what was our 5-year plan as new grads, like, we couldn't have even fathomed what we have created, because it didn't even seem like that was an option. And people hear about our lifestyle, they're like, you're only 30 and 32 part of the year. But we were just, we made smart financial choices from the beginning. And I mean, we still live a very fulfilling lifestyle. Like, we're not misers. We don't not spend any money, but we just made smart financial choices. And you can, one way or form or another, just by making strategic choices too. And then you can design a lifestyle where people are saying, like, how do you do that? That's so great. You have time to spend with your kids. You have time to take that vacation you've always, like, you can design your travel healthcare lifestyle to be something incredible.
Yeah, that's good.
Brian's freezing up on us a little.
Awesome. I think I'm having connection issues, or you guys are. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now, but you were frozen before.
I was frozen. Okay. I hope everyone got what you just said. Mexican Wi-Fi isn't very reliable. So I really appreciate it, you guys. Your course, you're going to offer a discount for MedVenture users if they type in MedVenture on the discount code if you sign up, if this really resonated with you. I took the course myself. It's super valuable. I highly recommend you guys do it. Jared and Whitney will be on the Zoom with us, on a Zoom call on the MedVenture app on Sunday, May 9th. So if you want to ask him more questions, learn more about it then, RSVP on there. Otherwise, Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to go look into HSA and 401ks and IRAs now. So appreciate it.
Good to talk to you.
See you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.